I walked in with my salsa boxes and my chips on top with my heels and my little dress, my skirt. I put the product down. They opened it up. They started to eat it. And all of a sudden, Eric at one point gets up and he says, "Oh my gosh, these salsas are so amazing. When can we have them?" My first question was, "How much do you need?" And he says, "Well, your first order is going to be 10,000 pounds of salsa." I couldn't even process that number because at that time I was making about 250 pounds a week for my friends. But I said, I'll do it. Let me just figure out how. The first order we had to cut 60,000 tomatoes, just me and another person. But that year we went from making $12,000 to $1.9 million in sales. All those supermarkets that said no, and they saw me on Whole Foods, now they were calling. Everything was changed. All you need is one yes, and every no is closer to that one yes. My name is Maria Magdalena de la Cruz Garcia. People call me Maggie, and I am a motivational speaker and coach.
Hey, Maggie, can you tell us a little bit about your life? I know a little bit about you just because we've done an interview for my TV show. Can you start a little earlier in how you got started in your career and earlier in life?
So as you know, I was born in an orphanage in the mountains of Michoacán, Mexico, and I have a big family. I have 68 brothers and sisters, and my parents adopted over 200 kids, and life there was from birth to 18 years old, and it was very, very challenging. There were so many things that now I see when I'm living here in the United States of how limited we had, but I think that the thing that saved me was my mind, my mentality, how I saw life, and what I chose to focus on. Especially, for me, it was the hope for something better.
And what kind of you think gives you that hope, especially at such a young age? Obviously being an orphan with 68 kids, and
yes,
and I'm sure you're not getting a whole lot, and life is pretty difficult at the time. So, obviously you don't see everything out there, so you don't know that your life's probably different than anybody else's. But what gives you that aspect of I'm gonna keep pushing?
I think for me, it was the not wanting to continue to suffer. And for me what I really believe is that there's two things that are happening in the polarity of this world. There's good and bad, light and darkness. And that which you choose to focus on, you feed. So the question is, which wolf do you feed the most? And that's because of that focus, you end up getting more of the things that you focus on. And so for me, I used my mind. I used to see myself being a superhero, doing these things in the mountains. I dug this cave that you've probably seen. As a matter of fact, I just found a new photo of it where they actually photographed me inside of it when I was 14. I built it when I was 8, but it was my secret hiding place where I used to just go in there and contemplate and see myself, my future self, of what I look like with a super successful woman with long hair, even though I have short hair, with a suit with heels behind a mahogany desk. And it was an image that I held in mind, even though I hadn't experienced anything, a life like that outside of the barbed wire fence where I grew up in Mexico. And so I think that we all have access to something bigger than ourselves. And I say this because I don't know how, but I was doing goals, I was doing affirmations, I was doing meditations, even before I read it in books in America. And I really believe that the reason I say I really believe everybody has access to this is because if you quiet your mind and you listen to your inner self and your intuition, there's something bigger than you that speaks to you and helps you, even though I didn't have the help of my caregivers and my siblings around me. But the big thing for me was really wanting to come out of there and be a success so that I could show them that if I could do it, they could do too. They could come out and live life differently in spite of the circumstances. And it was really, really hard because imagine being stuck in a place for 18 years. For me, for other people it was like a prison. For me, it was like an adventure. And it's all about how you see things too. There's Dr. Wayne Dyer said that if you can change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change. So it's all about how you see things. For me, if I could escape, the more I could escape, the better it was for me to maintain that state of mind. And I carried that through my life and in my business and what I'm continuing to do right now till this day. I still have a routine. And it's so important to have that because every day is a reset. It's like a blank slate. This is why we have to remember to prime our minds in the beginning of the day for success, because what you do, the first hour after you wake up, there's a lot of science that talks about this stuff. That's when your mind is the most programmable. If you hear or see something negative within the first 10 or 15 minutes of waking up, this is science. They tell you that you'll trigger a stress response in your body that will leave you on edge for the rest of the day. So what I do first thing when I wake up, I start with an incantation and I open my eyes and I'm so excited. And I go about looking at my visioning, my goals, my affirmations, my purpose. And then I incorporate movement into my daily routine because I understand how powerful it is for energy and for vitality and for life force. So these are the things. I remember when I was in the orphanage, I had my goals and I would put them underneath when we had a pillow, underneath my mattress, when we had a mattress, because when I was growing up, we didn't have beds. But I remember like looking at them when I woke up or before I went to bed and contemplating on the sky and so this is the type of thing. The thing is, you will never change your life if you don't change your habits. And it all starts with what you do, the first thing that you do in the morning.
No, I definitely believe that aspect. I mean, I'm starting a book called Symbol F, which kind of, states that information and kind of gets people to do that the first thing instead of looking at your phone and looking at something that you just can't control and you don't know what's going to happen. It's just kind of be more positive and be in that mindset and kind of going forward. But so you kind of from there, I know you went into basketball, but how did you even get into basketball? Was there
before I say that, I want to say there's a scientific research that happened in 2005. The National Science Foundation, they interviewed hundreds of thousands of people and they studied them. And they said that the average person thinks between 12 and 60,000 thoughts per day. They said out of those, 90% are negative and 85% are the exact repetitive thoughts of the day before. So what are you doing every morning to prime yourself to stop thinking the old ways and focusing on where you want to get from where you are to where you want to be? But going back to the basketball story, I felt like that was more of my way out because when I was growing up, soccer was a prominent thing in Mexico and basketball was like a new thing. And I thought, okay, I was thinking the entrepreneurial mind growing up in the orphanage. I was thinking if I could do something different than nobody's doing as a woman, more likely if I get really good at my chances of getting out are going to be and being successful are going to be amazing. So I remember that I started playing basketball and I was in junior high and I passed by the principal's office, which was a teeny tiny office, and I remember looking up and he had a TV that was like this wide and like a rectangle, but it was really deep. It was black and white. And he had Michael Jordan playing. And I said, can I come by and just watch during my breaks? Can I watch him? And he says, absolutely. So I started watching how he dribbled between his legs behind his back, how he shot the ball, and I started practicing that. And I would go back in the orphanage, and I remember that one week was particularly like an aha moment for me because when we were growing up, they paired us with an adult. So we grew ourselves up. When I was older, I was paired up with a younger kid. So you have to take them wherever you went, it really helped our caregivers, right? One week I was paired with a boy, his name was Pancho, and he arrived at the orphanage because our caregivers found him in a dumpster. He had spinal bifida, he couldn't walk. And my job was to carry him in my back wherever I went because he couldn't walk. So I had this light bulb moment. I said, Pancho, I'm going to blindfold myself. I'm going to put this rag on over my eyes and I'm going to dribble the ball and do all these things. Please tell me when I get to the edge of the court. And he was like, okay, yeah. So it was fun for him because he was laughing when I was doing my moves and everything. And I would imagine and I would see all these people coming at me and I was, going around them and scoring and all these things. And that's how I got really, really good. At one point, Pancho thought I was looking and stopped telling me to stop when I got to the edge and I hit a pole and I had stitches in my forehead But that's how I got really good. And by the time we won every game, every championship, by the time I got into high school, the last game of the season we won. We beat everybody. There was a recruiter for the Mexican national team, and they were in the audience, and they saw me play, and they went to my father, our caregiver, and told them that they wanted to offer me the opportunity to play basketball for the Mexican national team. I'm 5'2", so I'm really short. And within a few weeks, we were on to Mexico City. I played. They loved me, and they wanted me to play for the team. But they said, we're going to get back with you. And so we went back to normal things in the orphanage. And one day, my father introduces American football. And we started to play, and my brothers and I started to play. I played with my brothers all the time. That's how I got really good, too. And one of my brothers threw a long pass, and I caught it in the air, and I fell on the ground, and I broke my collarbone. And when I went to my dad, he was a doctor, and he stretched me back like really, really hard, and he was so rough. And when he noticed the fracture on this side, he said, "Your dreams are over." And so I was really disappointed and very sad. But there's a moment in time that I caught myself, and I said to myself, if this happened, there's got to be something better. There has to be something better. And so that's the mindset that I started to apply, even though it was painful. Like, I'm in that situation, but I'm thinking there's got to be something better. 3 days later, the Mexican national team called, and I couldn't go. And that's when it really hit me. But the important thing that I carried from that experience was if not this, then something better, because I kept that mentality, that mindset. When we traveled to the it was like 6 months after I broke my collarbone, somewhere around that time. Our caregivers took a bus, like a school bus. In Mexico, they call them guajoloteras. And they took half the seats off from the back, from the middle to the back, so that we would all fit. And they toured the United States to raise funds for the nonprofit, which was Mano de Ayuda. And when we were in America, they invited us to a picnic in West Virginia. And when we arrived, the picnic was set up. There's a ton of people, and there was a basketball court outside. And then the moment that my brothers and I saw the basketball court, we just went out and started to play. And that day, there happened to be the coach of the University of Charleston. She saw me play and asked about me. And then he told my dad, my father, I want her to come play for me in a scholarship. And that's why I'm here today. Now, if I would have listened to him, to my dreams are over, and not play that day, I don't think I'd be speaking to you today. Not playing for the Mexican national team is the best thing that never happened to me. And this is why I'm here.
And do you think, like, because I talked to a lot of different people that, their teacher or somebody said, this isn't really for you, this isn't that. What kind of, like, makes somebody kind of look past that? Because a lot of people, I think, do hear that one negative thing and kind of like go a different direction, because, you're young and you're thinking like, this person knows what I'm supposed to be doing, or this person has everything here. Like, how do you kind of feel like somebody can really kind of get past that?
Yes, I think that we all come in this time and space with a purpose in life. And most of the time, our parents, our siblings, our teachers, our friends, throughout our growth life, since we're children, they tell us, you shouldn't do this, you should do something else, or this is not you. But when we are children, when we are young, we are so connected to, you can call it divinity, something bigger than yourself. And it is important to recognize that if you're doing something that truly elates you, that mesmerizes you, that, like, one of the things that I tell people is, how do you discover your purpose? Go back in time from as far as you can remember till now, and look at all those things that made you feel alive, that elated you. If you could do them today, even without getting paid, you would still do it because it would bring you so much joy. The thing is that we stop dreaming, and we've forgotten the things that really moved us. And this is really powerful, because when I say everybody has a purpose, the chances of you being born in this time, there's a scientific study. There's several actually several scientists that came up with a study. They calculated the chances of you being born. And the interesting thing that they did was they took into account your own unique DNA makeup. They took into account the chances of your parents, grandparents, ancestors meeting. They took into account the chances of them staying together, having kids. They took into account natural disasters and wars and a couple more things. And they said that the chances of you being alive is 1 in 400 trillion. We are so lucky. We are a miracle that has never existed before in this form, or it will never exist again. So if you tell me that you don't have a purpose, you have a purpose. It's deep within you. You can discover it or rediscover it. Collective, personally and collectively. Like if you have a business, there's a purpose in what you do too. You can bring people together with that. There's a book that I read recently by Howard Gardner. It's called Frames of Mind, where he talks about the theory of multiple intelligences. And I found it very fascinating because it reminded me of a rediscovery that I had, which was when my father told me that I would never amount to anything, that I would die in prison and with AIDS because I came out to him. And it was really rough. I was trying to prove him wrong. That's why I became successful, but I only became successful to a certain extent because my why was based on fear. This is why I tell people never be on purpose based on fear. So the thing that happened was when he passed, he wrote me a letter before he passed telling me how amazing I was and how it was going to be a big thing and all these things. I have it somewhere in here. But the thing is, what I realized is that my salsa company was just a stepping stone to something bigger. And the biggest thing for me was, who am I going to prove wrong now? So I was forced into rediscovery. And not kidding you, I think it's been 3 or 4 weeks ago, I discovered a photo of me in the orphanage in a little stage speaking. I did poetry. I did all these things that I'm doing right now as a motivational speaker around the world. And so when you are on purpose, you feel like you've come back to yourself, like you've come back home. And it's a full circle sometimes for us. And sometimes we have to go through life and have these stepping stones. And sometimes we have to experience life to go through tribulations to teach us something, to help us grow, to teach us a lesson before we get there. But the truth is that your subconscious mind is always guiding you to your purpose like a GPS. And when you are not on purpose, you experience one bad thing after another, after another. This is the universe, God telling you, hey, you're going the wrong way. Get back on track. And when you start getting on track, you feel like everything's just happening for you and through you. And it's a really amazing thing. So that's what my life has been. And basketball, coming to the United States, going to college, becoming homeless, starting a salsa company with $800 and growing it out of knowing nothing about business, and then selling it with Garden Fresh to Campbell's for $231 million. When I speak and when I show this photo for the first time of me, giving a little speech in the orphanage and seeing that photo of me in that cave, I'm like, wow, I used to be there. I'm here. Wow. Dreams are possible. And there's a purpose deep down in each and every one of us. And it is our job to discover what that is, because we all have a destiny, and it has to do with, it answers the questions as to why are we here? Why are we doing what we're doing? And the reason I'm saying these things is because when you have a purpose and you're so adherent to it, like so focused on it, you experience life at a totally different level. Nothing is impossible because you're focusing on that which you want to achieve. You have so much more happiness when you are living in the moment because you're focused on your ultimate outcome, your why. You experience joy, whether you realize it or not, because you are truly living what you're supposed to be living in this time and space.
And going back a little bit, when you came out to your caregiver, and obviously it's very hard to hear these things, like, one, how did you overcome that, or did it fuel you to kind of like move forward and prove them wrong? And like, how do you overcome it later in life? Because obviously, I'm guessing you probably look at it now as like, well, he did it because at the time he probably cared about me and felt like this was not the thing to do. So you have to internally take that in and kind of be like, what was his reasoning for this aspect?
Yes.
So how do you kind of like take that at the time?
And I love that you say that, because part of healing is understanding others as to why they did what they did. Because in order for me to forgive him, I had to understand why he said those things. And he was a preacher, he was a pastor. He had, I think, 19 churches around Michoacan, around the states in Mexico. And he could have thought, people are Maggie's going to suffer. People are going to say mean things to her. They're probably going to treat her wrong. She's probably going to experience life so much more difficult than she's already had it. He probably went through a series of different things. But the most important thing that I did to be able to forgive him was when I asked his family members on his sister. I asked her, what happened to him when he was growing up? He was beat up. He was abused. And his father told him the same exact thing that he told me, because he wanted to be a Golden Glove boxer. He says, you'll never be successful. You're never going to get there. Go be a medical doctor. And he became a medical doctor, and he helped a lot of people. But that was the biggest thing for me for forgiveness. But one of the things that I realized is that I'm so grateful and thankful that I went through what I went through, because those things, some people call it your mess is your message. They made me the person that I am today and stronger. And there's a lot of people that I grew up with that didn't make it. They ended up in cartels, prostitution, drugs, all these things. But what I do believe that we all have is one simple thing, and that is choice. We all have a choice as to how we're going to see, think, be. And for me, the most important thing that's helped me with everything is future casting myself into success. The person that I want to become, start becoming it now. And the letter that he wrote me, it completely blew me away, because he said, you are going to be so big. America needs more people like you. And he says, you're from the old school. And America needs more people like you to pass down your values. You are one big asset to everyone in your life, sweetheart. I'm really proud of you. Those were his words. And he never hugged me. He never said anything to me, but he wrote it in a letter a week before he passed.
And is that the time you kind of forgave him after the letter, or did you kind of get through it earlier?
I think that the forgiveness happened more later, because I was like, why? Like, what is this? Why does this happen to me? I realized forgiving him through forgiving my mother, because I realized how much abuse she got, because I also talked to her side of the family. And I realized that the way that they treated her is the way that she treated us. And because of that, I was able to instantly forgive her and him, even if they stay the same way, even if they continue to do the things that they do or did to us. I still forgive them, because I had compassion, and I had that aha moment that I know why this is happening, but I choose to acknowledge that we are all flawed, and they're also in their own journey to change, to discovery, and they will stay there as long as they need to live through whatever suffering they need to go through before they can come out. When you realize that you no longer want to be there, that's when you create something where you break a cycle. Because we all have cycles, relationships, family, habits. We all have cycles. When you make a decision to say, I don't want to suffer because of what's happened in the past, you recognize those things. One of the things that I've done is create a list of things that I no longer want to experience. And if they manifest, I'm going to take action on not becoming a part of that cycle, and make a list of all the things that I do want to manifest and start inviting those into my life. And that's how I've had the ability to break patterns, to break cycles, and also help certain family members break their own cycles.
And so from college, you're going to college now in the States. And I know obviously you didn't start out as a salsa company. You kind of going back, you said, like, I seen myself in this big desk, and I believe you started in interior design. So how did that kind of go?
So when I came to America, when I graduated high school, they taught 3 different things. One of them was accounting. The other one, I can't remember what it was. And the third one was architecture. So I graduated with an architecture degree in junior high school. So when I got recruited to play basketball for the Mexican national team, the only option at that university was interior design. So I took that. And life is taking me in a series of journeys. When I graduated college, the reason why I couldn't find the job and I became homeless is because there was only two firms, interior design firms in the entire state. And I read a newspaper, thing that said that 90+% of people that graduate with that degree have to move out of state because there's nothing there. And that's why I became homeless. And it was a really, really a tough time living in my car in the winter months, and then the engine exploding. I remember I would turn the heat up all the way to get warm, especially in the winter. And then when I would get too hot, I would turn it off. But my car ended up exploding the engine, and I remember just taking my clothes and stuff and few bags that I had, and I started just living in the forest and not in the streets too much because I didn't want to be like the other people. Like the forest to me was a friend because that's how I grew up. I grew up in the mountains. I was a hunter, and so I could survive easily. This is my original knife that I used to hunt with.
Glad it's on your desk.
Yeah, I take it with me when I speak. And my hunting horse. I mean, I didn't realize that I was homeless until years later when I started my salsa company and I was delivering to the Kroger company, which was in the state of West Virginia. And a lady at the checkout counter came up to me. She's like, "Maggie, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. I'm so proud of you. I remember you used to be homeless." And I was like, "What? Okay." And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I did used to be homeless. And I realized she was the lady that found me on the street and took me off the street and found me a place to stay. It was like maybe several weeks later that I was entered into the salsa contest. I won by unanimous vote. And that's when I had my aha moment that started everything from there.
So you win this contest, and I know somebody ends up giving you $800 to kind of like start this business just out of nowhere. I believe the person just comes up to you and just like, "I'm paying it forward."
Yes, at that contest.
And how do you take that $800 and really move into a multi-million-dollar business? Like, what are you kind of doing at this point?
Yes. So first, I have to say that those were the best, well-spent $800 of my life. The first thing that I did is I bought a food chop processor, and I bought tomatoes, I bought cilantro, onions, everything that you need for salsa, and I started making it and selling it to friends by the pint, and I would charge $5 a pint. I would make a lot of $1 and $5 bills, and I would pretend like I was a millionaire. Woohoo! And I would like take that and buy more tomatoes and keep making it, and then at some point, I got the product into the Capital Market, which is the main market in West Virginia, in the city center. And then I quickly realized that I needed to have a license to distribute in a place that was FDA compliant. So I got the Department of Agriculture involved. I got everybody involved. I got certified to distribute, and that's when the journey started. But the thing that happened with that is that here's the interesting thing. When you have a niche product, back then, fresh salsa wasn't a thing. It was like Tostito salsa that lasted on the shelves for many years. And I knew I had something unique and different. That's why I won that contest. And I had a feeling that I was going to receive somewhat like rejections from getting into like supermarkets and trying to market it. And I did. I remember writing down this list of stores to call from the smallest to the largest, and it was a long list. And it was very scary because I'd never picked up the phone to make cold calls. And I got 90 rejections that day, and I was so defeated, and I was so scared because people would tell you, "What? Fresh salsa? No." In West Virginia, like, no. And I would get hung up on. So I had a choice. At that time, I had a friend that told me, "Oh, you're not making any money. You should just quit. Just get a job." I even went to local food ready-to-eat manufacturers, and I asked how did they get their products into the stores. And they said, "They're not going to listen to you. It took us 5 years to get our products in." They're like, "You're nobody," basically. And what I did was, and the question that I asked a lot of people is, when something stops you, when there's a block, how do you deal with that? Do you give up, or do you find a way through, above, below, over on the side. Like, what do you do? And the best thing that I could think of, which was the scariest thing for me, was to take that list and turn it upside down, because I've categorized the stores from the smallest to the largest. Now at the very top was the largest organic retail in the United States, a Whole Foods Market. And I remember that I picked up the phone and I kept thinking, I hope they don't answer. I hope they don't answer. And they didn't answer. So I left a voice message and I said, hey, my name is Maria Magdalena de la Cruz Garcia. I have an awesome pico de gallo de salsa I think you guys would love. And I hang up the phone. And that's it.
That was it?
That was it. And I remember the next day I was parked in the city center in Charleston in my little car. And I got a call. And it was a man on the other line, on the other side. And he said, is this Maggie? And I said, yeah. He says, this is Eric with Whole Foods. And I'm like, I think I almost went in my pants. I was like, oh my gosh. And he said, we heard about you. We want to know more. When can you come? And I said, well, when do you guys meet? And he says, tomorrow at 9 a.m. And think about this. I was in West Virginia, 7-8 hours away. I said, I'll be there. I went back to the kitchen, made salsa, packed it in the car, traveled all night to get to Maryland. And when I arrived, I was blown away because the Mid-Atlantic Distribution Center is so big. I thought to myself, what in the hell did you get into, Maggie? Because it was so big. I remember parking my car, barely made it in time. I walked in with my salsa boxes and my chips on top with my heels and my little dress, my skirt. And they opened these huge doors and there was mostly men in a U table, like huge, gigantic room. And I was gulping, like swallowing, like, oh my gosh, what am I getting into? I put the product down. They opened it up. They started to eat it. And all of a sudden, Eric at one point gets up and he says, oh my gosh, these salsas are so amazing. When can we have them? My first question was, how much do you need? And he says, well, your first order is going to be 10,000 pounds of salsa. And I couldn't even process that number because at that time I was making about 250 pounds a week for my friends. But I said, I'll do it. Let me just figure out how. And that year we went, the first order we had to cut 60,000 tomatoes, just me and another person. But that year we went from making $12,000 to $1.9 million in sales. The rest is really history because what happened was that all those supermarkets that said no, and they saw me on Whole Foods, now they were calling. And so we invested $0 in marketing because it was just word of mouth. It was people going into other supermarkets saying, why don't you have our products? And that's really how everything was changed. All you need is one yes, and every no is closer to that one yes. And what people don't get sometimes is they give up on their dreams. They stop short of gold, and somebody else gets that. Today, there are so many fresh salsa companies. The market is so saturated. If I started a salsa company today, it wouldn't be the same as when I started back then because the growth was so rapid. It was exponential. We grew 500% every single year. And to grow that way, you had to be on your feet about systems, about flow, about manufacturing, about am I going to have enough cost of goods to continue to push this product out? And the interesting thing is that when Whole Foods asked for the first order, I needed exactly $20,000 to fulfill it because I made all the calculations, but I didn't have that money. I went to banks. They rejected me and I felt so bad. Like, why would they? But I realized now that because when I asked my friends, would you loan me 20 grand? I'll pay you in full by next week. Because Whole Foods they would pay me $40,000 every week. And they asked, well, how can we guarantee that you're going to pay us back? Same thing the banks were saying. And so I was like, let me go to Whole Foods. I'm going to figure it out. And I said, hey, can you put something in writing to say that you're going to pay me in a week? They're like, yeah, it's called a contract. And so we signed an agreement. I showed my friends. They let me borrow 20 grand. The following week, I got 40, paid that back. And then every week, it was just growing and growing. And that's how we just Whole Foods was 1.9 million. I'm not counting the rest of the supermarkets that came into play. Later on, we got Walmarts, Sam's Clubs, Costco's, all over the country, 38 states. And we were distributing. I created my own fleet of trucks all over the the United States, and systems too, because fresh salsa has got a very limited shelf life, and it was an all natural fresh salsa. Things like a MAP, modified atmosphere packaging, HPP, hydrostatic high pressure processing, that you submit the product in pressures of below sea level to kill all the microorganisms, and the products just last. You can take avocado, mash it, putting in this machine, and it'll last for 60 days with nothing in it. And that's how. And even I didn't need to know the how. When this is an interesting story, because when I went to the Department of Agriculture and they looked at my products to approve them for distribution, the VP woman, her name was Teresa, she said, your products, by the time they hit the shelves, will only have 5 days shelf life. You're not going to make it. You should cook it like everyone else. And I said, no, I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to stick to what I believe and what I have. Years later, I was at a farmer's market selling guacamole and salsas, to people. And she came up and she started eating the guacamole, and she couldn't say it right. She had guacamole under her teeth. She was like, is this guacamole or something like that? and she was so elated with my products. She says, remember when I told you to cook your products? And I said, yeah. She says, well, I'm so glad you didn't listen to me, because it was such a breakthrough product. It was nothing out there like it. One of the things that I discovered later on as I started my salsa company is that I came up with amazing products that other people copied. Fortunately, you can't patent salsa or food products because anybody can make them. But it was the leading edge of, the new movement of fresh salsa making, like really, really good fresh salsa, pico de gallo style, that started everything for us.
And at this time, when you're starting out and you're just selling them for $5 to friends, how long is that process before you actually kind of like really get that first big order?
Yes. So that's a really good question. Actually, nobody's ever asked me that. When I started the salsa company, one of the things that I was very smart not to do is to quit my job and just do salsa. See, I managed to get an interior design position. I was getting paid minimum wage. So I did that. I taught at the university and I made salsa at night. And so I built and grew the salsa company just by selling it to friends. And there was a Capital Market, there was a mom and pop meat store, they bought it. There's another couple of different stores in the area that bought it. So I was making this product at night. And that's really how it grew. So I started the company in 2004. 2007 is when Whole Foods Markets happened. And it was so easy to give up when you feel alone, when nobody's there, when nobody believes in you or the products that you have. But it's much more powerful when you think about the focus, laser sharp to where you want to be because of how good the products are. And I did test to make sure people loved them. They just didn't know about them. That's the difference.
And after, you're running the business, and I know at the times you're sleeping at the business. I seen a photo where, you're putting a piece of wood on the driver's pedal and the clutch to drive the trucks yourself. I mean, you're just doing ridiculous stuff. But at some point you sell off the business to a company then that sells it off to Campbell.
Yes.
But what do you do at this time? Do you, when you start making money, do you buy anything for yourself? I know you give back a lot back to Mexico or anything, but did you buy yourself like a Porsche, or did you get yourself a nice watch? Did you end up getting yourself something?
Yes, I did. And the funny thing is the first big thing that I ever bought for myself was a red Ferrari. And I immediately sold it because I realized how many kids I could feed in Mexico. But it was like, I've never had anything like this. Like, oh my gosh. And I quickly realized that the purpose is not, and for me, is not to have all these flashy things. And when you die, when you transition, you don't get to take any of them with you. What you do get to take is what you did to really help others, and within the purpose that you're here for, to enrich their lives, because in turn they enrich your lives too, your own life too. And so, I could have had the chance. I have the chance to do anything, like be exotic, do all these things. But I'm a very, very grounded person. I'll buy things like an old 1994 beat up Toyota truck that's rusted and everything, and then I'll have a nice car and I'll drive that one to ground me, right? Because I will never want to forget where I came from. I always want to remember.
Do you think buying that car is like that one thing that kind of like says I made it for you? Like, even though you sold it right afterwards, it's just like, you know, when you're growing up very poor, I feel like it's that status symbol. Like, I made it. I did something with my life. I can show people.
My moment for that was not the car. It was Walmart when they came knocking on my door. I was like, I've made it. This is it. This is the moment. And the only reason they came knocking on my door is this. This is why I believe that, you know, people talk about minorities and not having opportunities in this country. It's all about how you show up. Because when they came knocking on my door, they were injecting $4 billion into their supply chain to bring people like me, with minorities, with products like mine, to market. And that's how they reached out to me. Of course, I did a whole set of affirmations to manifest the largest supermarket in the world, but I didn't say which one. It happened within 28 days. My business partner back then, when they called me, they're like, hey, we saw you online. We were looking at 10 different companies and we think yours is the best. You want to sell to Walmart. And I thought I told my business, I put it on pause, on mute, and I told my business partner, she's like, it's a prank, hang up. And I'm like, wait a minute. I've been visualizing all this process and it's here. And it so happens that a month later, I was in Bentonville shaking the hand of the buyer exactly as I had imagined and visualized and practiced in my mind, with the smells in the room, with him opening the products, with him putting me in all the distribution centers across the country.
And once you sell the business, I talked to a lot of, you know, different entrepreneurs, and a lot of them seem to get depressed because now they feel like they don't have anything. Like, yeah, they have a bunch of money, but it's kind of this aspect of like, I used to have operations. I used to do this.
Yes.
Did anything happen to you when you sold the business off, and, you know, it's your baby. You started 3 years without really making money, and
yes,
then, you know, putting everything into it, and you sell it. Yes. And, you know, obviously you move to a totally different kind of business, but how do you kind of go through that process? You
never should sell your baby until you have some bigger plans set ahead for you. Like, what is your next stepping stone? It all goes back to your why. A lot of people sell all out and they're like depressed. They probably get sick. They die soon. The important thing is the focus and the power of your why, as to why you do things, why you're doing what you're doing here in this time and space. Because your why, if it's strong enough, it has the ability to bring you to so much success, because you're focused on something to where you want to get. So for me, when my father died and that opportunity came, I'm like, I'm okay letting go of my baby. I know what my stepping stone is, and that was to become a speaker, a coach, and do things, be on stages. I'm a performer, and I love doing that, even though sometimes it scares me, right? I'm such an introvert, but I knew that. And because of that, it was easier to let go. And also because when I really studied who I was selling the company to, their culture was so much like my culture, so that I knew that my people would be taken care of. And I knew that they had the ability to take my products and really take them to the next level in a much bigger way than I had, which was already pretty big.
And my last question would be, if you had to start over and give advice to like somebody that was just starting in the industry, what advice would you give them if they had to start from scratch, you know, starting from pretty much nothing? Maybe you can get $1,000. What advice would you give them?
I would say start with the focus of why are you here, and have a discovery or rediscovery as to what is it that you're supposed to be doing, because with a strong enough why, you can deal with any what and how. Nothing is impossible. You're so hyper-focused on that end result that there's no impossibilities. You will achieve that because you have the hunger and the fire and the passion, no matter what comes your way.